Hey folks, Jimmy here, aka Palette of the Dead. Welcome back to the channel and welcome to the latest issue of Warhammer 40k Combat Patrol magazine. Now, as per usual with all these videos, if you like them, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't subscribed already, and of course, drop me a comment down below. Love hearing back from you guys. It goes a massive way to helping out the channel too. Now, this week we're obviously on issue 28 of good old Warhammer 40k Combat Patrol. It is the Eldari Wind Riders issue the second one of them, should I say. So to part 2 of 3, we will get another set of these sprues next week. These are exactly the same as what we had last week, and very straightforward. They're fairly easy to build, very straightforward. There's not many options for them, just get them built up, have a bit of fun with them. The one thing that I will say is you do not have to put the rider on straight away. You can assemble the bike separate from the rider and paint them separately if you want to get into all the details and such like that. If you're not too fussed about it, bung it all together, then paint it. But personally, I like to go for detail, so I will be painting the rider separate from the vehicle because, craziness. As with last week as well, you get the clear plastic flying stems for them as well, so very straightforward, and next week will be exactly the same. So, going into the issue itself. First off, we're greeted by a section for giving us a bit more lore and history for the Eldari and all about hosts of the dead, so even death does not end the service of warriors of the Eldari. Kind of like the Space Marines, really. They must fight on when their craft world calls on them. Amid any Eldari army stand legions of ghost warriors, constructed from psycho-conductive wraithbone and animated by the souls of fallen warriors. They stride purposefully across the battlefield, protecting their living kin and their home. All manner of these constructs serve on the battlefield, from whole units of wraith blades wielding axes and blades, through to mighty titans that rise up over even the largest opponents. Now, this gives us a little bit of a hint. So, for things like the Wraith Lord and Wraith Blades and such like that, generally don't have a physical pilot. They are powered by psychoconductive waves and such like that, and it's all a bit weird and a bit nuts. Kind of how the dreadnoughts for the Space Marines are actually piloted by Space Marines who have essentially died and are basically being put into a sarcophagus in the middle of the dreadnought, and then they power that and keep that going to carry on the fight and such like that. So kind of along them lines, but a little bit different. So it's a bit weird. Then you get a bit of information about the actual wraiths themselves. So wraiths can come in several different forms, so whether it's a Wraith Knight, Wraith Guard and such like that. So there are some really cool ones. Now, I must admit, I do like the Wraith Knight because he's a big bugger. Now, one thing I am going to quickly mention is Wraithbone is a bit of a contentious subject at the moment. Most people will say there has been a retcon about what Wraithbone actually is. However, I must admit, I don't know the full details. There is a very well in-depth video that I watched the other day. Well, I say watched, I listened to the other day, that involves Wraithbone. Now, the person went through pretty much every codex all the way up to the second codex from the good old Eldari range, and during that time they never really found a definitive answer of what Wraithbone is. It's always been a psychoactive material. They did find, however, in an old White Dwarf issue where it says that Wraithbone is made from the essence of the warp and has been formed and grown into these structures. Whereas the new codex kind of says that it's like an ore, and it's a material that is essentially forged, grown into these shapes and forged and everything like that. Whatever the answer is, I'm not going to say. I personally do think that they can retcon these type of things. and give a little bit more detail, because obviously you're not supposed to. The codexes originally were meant to be written from the eyes of the Imperium, and then so on. So I would always read it in that way, that it's written from the eyes of the Imperium, so there are things that the Imperium do not know about each alien race, and there'll be little things that they find out later on. So that's how I see it anyway. Whether you agree with me or disagree with me, that's fine. I don't really have any skin in the game on that one. It's just how I personally read into it. But in other words, I mean, Eldari, yeah, the idea of Wraithbone, whether it's psychoactive material or made from the essence of a warp, both are pretty cool stories. So it's, yeah, it is what it is. Anyway, moving on. We get a bit of information about the Drukhari. So the Drukhari are essentially Dark Eldar, really. So, like, kind of like the Dark Elves. So, the Drukhari are an arrogant and callous group of Eldari who lurk in settlements in the Webway. They delight in causing pain and suffering, seeing their own needs as paramount over those of their victims. However, since the fall, they have managed to live much as they did before, reveling in lives of degenerate villainy. So, since before the fall of the Eldari, the Drukhari have lived in the Webway in great port cities, the largest of which is the dark city of Comora. Might have said it wrong. Deep in this alternate dimension, the Drukhari were insulated from many of the effects of the birth of Slaanesh, and they have continued with the same debauched and extreme lifestyles that brought about the fall so many years ago. So, I must admit, I kind of like some of the Drukhari. So, the Drukhari have the Corsairs and such like that, which are a little bit different and a little bit more funky. They're kind of essentially, they are the Dark Elves, really, from good old Warhammer the Old World, in Warhammer 40k. They rely a lot more on that kind of thing, and yeah, they're a bit more kind of, happy to take slaves and stuff like that, which is always a bit of a, thing. Anywho, moving on. We're going to go read section about Warzone Bastior. So in the galaxy-spanning Imperium, the Bastior subsector played a small but vital role. A tangle of worlds provided food, soldiers and other offerings to the Imperial war machine, but with the re-emergence of the High Fleet Leviathan, this small area suddenly became the centre of a desperate struggle against the Tyranids. So, a little bit of more information about a good old Leviathan, and there are many different war zones in the Warhammer 40,000 universe. All these war zones involve multiple planets. They involve subsectors of space, and they generally have main combatants in these sectors. So, you will find out more about these later on. We will get more and more about these. There are some, if you bought good old Imperium magazine, there are a handful enlisted in there, and you do get these nice little maps when I'm not batting away the magazine, apparently, which are pretty cool and pretty interesting and always good to look at. So you get a little bit of information about where everything is, and then a little bit closer up as well. So, pretty cool stuff. And it gives us a little bit more to look out for. It also gives us a look at who are the kind of main warriors involved in these areas, whether it's Lord Solar Leontus. Yeah, I'm saying that very, very wrong, and someone will correct me, and I'm fine with that. So yeah, you get a lot more information about those, which is really, really good stuff. It gives you a bit more history and lore and such like that you can figure out, you can find out, and you can read and explore at your will later on. Then we move on, we have a read section all to do with the Horus heresy. Now, this is an Imperium section of the magazine. This is giving us some details about the 31st millennium and the Horus heresy, which is its own separate game, which you can get from good old GW if you wish to, and where the Great Crusades kind of took a turn, and the Emperor, didn't really have a good fun time with it, as his main war master Horus decided to turn his back on him, and the infliction of chaos and such like that. which is pretty cool information and pretty interesting to read through. So, pretty good stuff, and you get a little bit more about that. So, worth reading, especially if you want more history about the lore. If you want to get even more about it, there are a really, really good series of books, from what I've been told, all to do with the Horus heresy, which these novels give us loads and loads of lore, loads of history, loads of story, and paint a better picture than what I will, and from what most of these books will, and magazines and such like that. Read the novels. That's probably the best way to do it. Then, talking about reading, we get more about the Bonds of Honor, part 7. So this is going back to this good old Silver Templar story that we're getting through there. And yeah, pretty cool, pretty interesting, and adds more and more to it. So yeah, we get a bit more about that. Then we're moving on, we have our collect page for the Wind Riders. So obviously you can give them their unit name, their deeds and such like that, and their role for their tactics. Have a bit of fun with it. You get the data sheet on the other side. Obviously we already have the data card, so you don't really need this bit, but you can if you really, really want to. But it's pretty cool stuff. Then we're moving on, we get more of the core rules and the core concepts for the actual game of Warhammer 40k. So, over time we will get more and more of these pages, which will essentially give us a miniature version of the rule book itself for Warhammer 40k. And yeah, it's pretty good. We get a nice little bit of artwork in there, and we will get even more going on. So if you are going to play Warhammer 40k on a regular basis, you may want to keep these pages, have a good read through them, and you keep them safe so you can refer back to them later on, so then you can carry on. Because I'm not going to lie, your chances of you learning the entire rule book isn't massive. So some people will learn the vast majority of the rules, and you'll learn them better the more you play. But if you're just starting out, keep these bits nearby so you can keep on having a flick through and a bit of a read, and kind of refresh your brain as you go with them. And yeah, it carries on for a little bit longer, giving us a bit more of rules and concepts and such like that, and how kind of a synergy can happen between units and more. So, pretty cool stuff, pretty interesting, and very, very worth it for whether you're playing just combat patrol missions or if you're going to play bigger games of 40k later on. These are very, very interesting. You can also determine the kind of visibility of units, so whether they're around a corner, whether you're hidden behind something that's pretty big and chunky. Yeah, it's all to do with line of sight, really. So, pretty cool stuff. And yeah, you're just basically going to go through that, and it gives you an idea of how the battlegrounds work. Now, we already have a bit of an idea about this anyway, because of all the little walkthroughs. So you have the command phase, movement phase, shooting phase, charge phase, and fight phase. So each phase is very, very important, and thinking tactically about each bit can affect how your game is going to work out. So make sure these things are kept to one side and kept nearby, and over time you'll learn them, you'll pick them up, you'll get more and more used to them, and away you go. Happy days. Now, moving on. So, issue 29, part 3 of our good old Wind Riders for the Eldari, the kind of end-ish of the Eldari as well. We'll get a new scenario for battling, and then issue 30 is a paint issue. Issue 30, 2 paints, pretty decent, Mechanica Standard Grey and Agrax Earthshade, which is a shade paint obviously. Yeah, both of them will come in very, very handy. I must admit, I use Mechanica Standard Grey on a fairly regular basis. Agrax Earthshade, in between, so it depends on what I'm painting up, but otherwise both very, very good, very, very valuable paints to have in your palette, and happy days. That is it from me though. Thank you so much for watching, and yeah, I will see you sometime soon. Bye bye now.